Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. It's Kelly. I thought I would come on today and do a video as a follow-up to the recent social media post that I put out there where I listed the symptoms that adult daughters were contending with who'd experienced being undermothered as kids. I know it resonated with a lot of you because I had a lot of you reach out to me. I had a lot of interaction with the post, but I had some women reaching out and saying, "Oh shit, that's me. That's my life. Wow." Um, and I know how painful it is because it was also, my experience. That was my internal world as well. So that list of symptoms, it came from, the research that I've been doing. Also, I talked recently with about 20 women and over the last few weeks who'd had challenging relationships with their moms. So this is a compilation of symptoms they described to me and was also my own personal experience. So like I said, I know how painful it is. At least for me, it was a very painful way to live. I just felt like I was putting out so much energy all of the time, and yet the life of, joyful, loving life, and I just, always seemed to evade me. I always felt like I was under so much pressure all the time. So I wanted to come on and kind of address that, acknowledge that that's a lot maybe to see or to experience, kind of like listed all in one place. And that really is describing our quality of life, right? That's big time impacting our quality of life. So we don't, this is that list of symptoms is when we're dealing with the list of symptoms, we're in survival mode. Like we're not thriving, we're surviving. We're in survival mode, which is a challenging place to be. So when we're taking on the challenge of healing, we're taking on the challenge of moving from a state of continuous survival into a thriving state where we can release the pressure, feel okay about ourselves. Wouldn't that be nice? So today I thought I would do a video just to talk about some skill building so we can move from survival into thriving. So I'll focus on one skill today. I think it is the number one most important skill that you can build when you are recovering from, childhood stuff, healing from our mothers. It is self-compassion. That is number one. Number one, radical self-compassion. So what does that mean? That means kindness. That means kindness to myself when I'm at my worst. Kindness to myself at all times, it means being self-loving, giving myself grace, knowing that I'm trying the best I can, knowing when to soothe myself and be there for myself and comfort myself, recognizing, maybe how hard it's been, how overwhelming it's been, how sad I felt, how lonely I felt, whatever kind of, I call them crunchy emotions, right? Anything like that that's coming up, and really having a lot of compassion for myself, that this is my experience of life. This is my experience of life, and dropping into that space. It is fundamentally important, okay? Because self-compassion is like a bridge. Okay, and it's a bridge that leads us to the land of self-love. Trying to put myself in the video of the land of self-love and self-acceptance. That's what we're trying to create, is moving into a space. If I can have compassion for myself, if I can love myself through a bad day, then I can accept myself and I can accept my, flaws. Being human is not perfect. It's not being perfect. Perfectionism and human are incompatible concepts. They are incompatible. Okay. So when I have compassion, I can let a lot of shit go that I have no control over anyway. No control over it anyway. So I can kind of let it go. Easier said than done, I know, but that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about this and how to kind of move into that space a little bit better. So, why do I lack self compassion? Um, as it relates to having a challenging relationship with my mom. Well, because our moms nurture us, and through that nurturing, I learned how to nurture myself. So if I didn't receive the nurturing, then I don't know how to nurture myself. And in that sense, it is a skill. It's a skill we're learning how to do. That's all. Being careful to say, not I'm trying to be compassionate. No, I'm learning. I'm learning. And if this is a new concept for you, just knowing that, like anything in the path to like mastering a new skill, right? I like to use like the piano. I was always admired people who can play the piano. It's so complicated. They have many things happening at the same time. You're not going to sit down on your lesson, day one of learning how to play the piano, and do a concerto, for the auditorium full of people. It's just not realistic, right? We have to start, plinking away at notes. It's the same thing. We're learning a skill, right? We're not going to have it mastered. We're just going to kind of play around with it, explore, see how I feel, see if I can loosen up and lean into the spot of being a little kinder to myself. And we can ask ourselves, okay, so if I was more self compassionate, what becomes possible for me in my life? Like, what would that be like to live in friendship with myself? What would that feel like? What would my life look like? Right? And if I'm not there, what's one thing that I can do to change in order to allow myself to connect more with being self-compassionate? Like, what in my life do I have to change in order to make room for that? Okay? So it's a big one. So why? Why? So through self-compassion, like I said, we can find that self-acceptance, we can find that self-love, which feels so good. So those things are fundamental, foundational to being a thriving human. They absolutely are. They absolutely are. I'm building a solid base, a solid foundation of self-love, self-compassion, and self-acceptance, right? So that nobody can come at me criticizing me, because I'll say, like, who are you? I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Let's have a sip of water here. Hydrate. It also, when I'm have a practice of self-compassion, well, guess what, guys? That shitty voice in our heads that's always picking away at us, you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't get fed. It doesn't get fed. If I'm compassionate with myself and I can hear the shitty voice, and I just go, oh, there it is again. Yeah, okay, this is a pattern I've learned. It's not me. Okay, there it is. Well, I can just be kind to myself in this moment, knowing that this is what I learned to do in order to cope with my childhood, because these are all childhood strategies for navigating the complexity of the home in the absence of adults who had the ability and the skills to be able to navigate on behalf of the family. Okay. There we go. Better. Self-compassion, what else does it do? It dissolves shame. So a lot of us with issues with our moms, difficult moms, we feel a lot of shame about that. And shame is a really dense, heavy emotion, energy. It is the densest, it's the heaviest, it's the stickiest of the emotions is shame. Shame amplified is suicidal ideation. Shame is, I want to be eliminated. I don't want to be here. Guilt is, I did something wrong. Shame is, I am wrong. And so self-compassion can start to dissolve this dense, heavy, it's kind of like, sticky tar. It has to be dissolved with love. to it just gets dissolved with our love for ourselves. So that's what you have to really connect with, because it'll start to kind of eat away at that without directly addressing it. We still need to directly address a lot of our wounds, but self-love can kind of start to dissolve some things without us working necessarily directly with it. So that's a really beautiful thing. And self-compassion is really necessary when we are going to be embarking on deep healing work. So when we're doing deep healing work, we need to kind of understand our background, our context, what really happened to us. Yeah, we need to understand that. That's helpful. That's useful. That's not the whole story, and that's not the full way that we heal. We heal when we feel. There's a good motto. I heal when I feel. And so there's a lot of muck in there to feel, particularly when we have shame, when we felt rejected by our moms, you know. I mean, we know, right? If I didn't feel loved by my mom, who's going to love me? I mean, that's kind of, that's a painful thing to touch upon, but that's definitely in there. So if I can hold compassion for myself, I can start to go into some of that really sticky, difficult stuff that we've spent a lifetime avoiding. That's been our survival strategy, is avoiding a lot of that stuff and trying to be, you know, overthink and overcompensate in many other ways. So we need to have compassion so we can see ourselves as we really are. Like, I need to see the patterns where I'm maybe, you know, self-sabotaging. The things about myself I don't want to see. Well, I'm self-sabotaging. Oh, here's some unhealthy habits I have. Oh, here's how I wasn't very kind to that person. Or I have some, you know, of that kind of stuff. If we lack compassion, we won't go anywhere near that stuff. And the way to heal is to go into it. I mean, going into the pain is the way to heal. You know, it's not to avoid it, that's for sure. And so that really allows us to take responsibility for our lives and not take responsibility. I know a lot of us were shamed. Like, you know, shame is a powerful motivator, and take responsibility and accountability is like a big part of a lot of messaging that a lot of us receive or that we see around society. So that's not what I mean about taking responsibility. That's a manipulation of that. Really, taking responsibility is the ability to respond. It's the ability to respond in the present moment to what I need. And that's taking responsibility. And by the way, that's also the very definition of empowerment. Empowerment means I'm able to respond appropriately in the situation, in the present moment, as it calls for it. So self-compassion allows us to do all of those things, which is really beautiful. I will also say this. The most important relationship that you will ever have in your life, ever, is the one with yourself. It's not your relationship with your kids or partners or even mom, even though that's kind of, you know, obviously the catalyst of all of this. This is why we're here, this relationship. The relationship with yourself is the number one most important relationship. So our moms taught us how to relate to ourselves, and she taught us how to nurture ourselves or not. So the relationship I have with myself is, first of all, you know, that impacts my quality of life 100%. 100%. My relationship with, if I'm shaming and blaming and criticizing myself, that's a poor quality of life. And that's the relationship I have with me. And that relationship I have with me is the template from which I interact with everybody else. So it's really vitally important that we improve the relationship we have with ourselves, that we invest in the relationship we have with ourselves. You know, is it a lifelong romance? Is it loving and kind? You know, do you know how to create a soft place for yourself to land when you've had a bad day, or you're having a rough go, right? It like I didn't learn how to nourish getting hung up on the words. I didn't learn how to nourish myself. I didn't learn how to nurture myself. But what I was really great at was criticizing myself. So I was really self-abusive. So is the relationship with myself loving and kind and supportive, or is it critical and abusive and shaming, right? So we want to take a look at that. We want to go, ooh, I want to have a really beautiful relationship with myself. I want to be my number one favorite person, number one most supporter, bestest supporter, which is, I mean, it's just so vitally important for being a thriving person. It's vitally important. If you don't do anything else with healing, if you stop here, that's perfect. We got to learn how to treat ourselves way better. Our society also doesn't model that. So, I would say, read, look into it, forge your own path. Don't look around to you for people to model self-love, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people think self-love is hitting the gym or something. It's not. It's being able to create an emotional container and hold yourself. It's be able to have a bad day and not beat the shit out of yourself. That's self-love. That's self-compassion. It's difficult. If you haven't learned it, it's very difficult. But it's a practice, and it is a skill that we can build on. Baby steps. Okay, so what are we going to do to move forward with our self-compassion? It's not going to come to people who are not, who lack that self-compassion. It's not coming overnight. It's not coming overnight. It's a practice and it's a process. But we can continue to build upon it. So some things you can do. Do something intentionally kind for yourself every day, whatever that is. Something loving, something that touches your heart, something that maybe makes you feel supported, something that, so you can remind yourself, I've got my back. I've got my back. I'm not saying you can't rely on other people. I'm just talking about our relationship with ourselves, right? Something else we can do is just noticing when I'm hard on myself, noticing when I'm weaponizing my mistakes and I'm using them as ammo to beat the crap out of myself, right? Noticing that. And we're not changing it, shifting it. We're not berating ourselves. No, it's just like, okay, oh, look, there it goes again. I have compassion for myself. I know that this is something I learned how to do, and this has been here for a long time. And believe me, it'll run out of steam if we don't play into it. It runs out of steam. It just takes time to do that. It's kind of like a fan. Imagine a fan going at full speed. You've got the fan going, and you pull the cord out of the wall. Well, the fan takes a long time to slow down, doesn't it? It's not getting energy. Same thing with this critical voice in our head. That's kind of what we need to do. Kind of deprive it of oxygen just by going, oh, you again? Come on in, have some tea. You're an old friend of mine, and I realize you were here a long time ago to protect me and make me feel safe or whatever. It was an adaptation. It was something that came up in childhood just to help us navigate the complexity of the home. So it's like, you're just a buddy who's trying to keep me safe. I don't really need this anymore, but yeah, come on in, have some tea, and let's hang out. There you are again. I mean, basically not making yourself wrong. Not making yourself wrong for it. Another thing that we can do is when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed is just asking myself, like, what do I need right now? What do I need right now? And it's also okay if the answers aren't coming. If we're not used to taking care of ourselves, the point is that we're learning to build the skills. And just by asking is a step. Just by asking myself, that's a step in learning, right? What do I need right now? Maybe I need, a hug. I can give myself a hug. I can ask somebody to hug me. Maybe I need to, honestly take a day off. Maybe, I don't know. It's just, there's a variety of things we could do. You ask yourself in the moment, what do I need right now? See what happens. And the last thing I'll just share around kind of cultivating this self compassion is connect with your own internal mother. Because we have one. We have an inner child. We also have an internal mother. We do. There's a nurturing part to ourselves. So if you have children, I mean, is that not the part that shows up to help nurture your kids? Right? So that mother that's in you, turn her inward onto yourself and allow her to nurture you. Like we can do this. We have the ability to do this to ourselves. So those are just some things to kind of play with. And if I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but if this is all you do in terms of healing, is learn to be nicer to yourself, and I mean radically so, when no one else is looking, right? The internal voice in your head. If all you do is learn to be nicer to yourself, your quality of life is going to greatly improve. Greatly improve. Greatly improve. Mine did. And what I found is that, there were some crunchy things I've had to heal. I didn't start me healing until after my kids were well into their teenage years. So I raised my kids when I was contending with a lot of trauma. And also, anyway, not getting into the details of life, but I was contending with a lot of trauma. I had to do some repairing with my kids, do a little bit of repairing of those relationships. And I couldn't go into that if I didn't have compassion for myself and say, hey, Kelly, come on, man. Let's be real about what you were dealing with, about how scared you were, about how heavy this has all been, about how lonely you felt, about how sad it's made you, the grief over, kind of the potential of life that I feel I didn't realize, or those kinds of things. Anyway, it's very difficult to kind of go into that heavy stuff if we can't hold ourselves at the same time. So I would love to hear from you. I hope you found this helpful. Feel free to send me a message or like or share. Share it with your buddies if you know that they're going through a hard time as well. This self-compassion piece is just incredibly powerful. You cannot love yourself enough. You cannot love your children enough. They've done studies on that. There's no such thing as too much love. There is such a thing as helicopter parents, and that's anxiety-based. Different thing, but I'm talking about love and compassion. You cannot give yourself too much. Love yourself up. The greatest romance of your life is the one you have with yourself. Date yourself. Be sweet to yourself. I'll leave you with one last thing that I found really helpful. I would actually send myself, I would program it into my phone, like affirmations, cute little things I would say to myself, like, you've got this. If I knew I was having a bad day, or I knew I was having something coming up that would be challenging for me, I'd schedule like a little affirmation in my phone, or quotes, or send myself, anyways, timed messages, that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, even though I knew that I was doing it, like, I would be I was like, oh, checking my phone, I'd be like, I'm so touched. And it really worked. It really worked. It really uplifted my spirits and gave me a smile or a giggle, or just like a, wow, look how you're putting your effort into, rather than trying to hang on to all the pressure, like, wow, look at all, you're putting some energy into being kind to yourself. Wow. It's been a game changer for me. So Beautiful. I will leave it there. Like I said, reach out if you'd like and connect, and I shall see you again soon. All right. Okay. Bye.